Hello everyone. Today we will talk about JavaScript and we'll basically see basic fundamentals of JavaScript, and we'll talk about the data types, the operators, the condition statements, loops, functions, arrays, and even an arrow functions. So why is that? Why will we see it in all this aspect in web programming course? Well, because we use JavaScript a lot. We use it for the dynamic behavior at the client side. Also, we use it in the server side web applications. And what is JavaScript? Well, it is a platform independent. So you can use it in different web browsers. And it's a scripting language. It's an interpreted language. We don't have this compile time and then run it. It's an interpreted language. It supports both functional and object-oriented programming style. So basically, functional programming means that you basically the core programming structure of the program depends on the functions, and we design the all concept based on functions. But in an object-oriented programming, we design the objects and then design our application based on that. And JavaScript has uh, each uh, each year has a different version, and its current version is ES 2026. And again, as I said, it can be used for client-side scripting, which and so in server-side programming, and also the desktop and mobile app development. And what can we do now, especially for web design programming? Well, on the client side, we can handle the client side events like when a button is clicked, you want to uh, change the image and so on. So make it more interactive. And also we can even manipulate the document objective model so that we can add, modify, delete HTML elements, so you can literally change the content of your web page. And by using JavaScript, we actually can now uh, define algorithms, write code, do some calculations, and by doing this, we can validate input values. Like we can check if it is an valid one, if it is, so that we can send it to the server or not. So before we want to submit to the server, we can check it on the client side to check if the value is valid, not malicious, and so on. And um, and it also allows us to perform asynchronous server calls called Ajax. So what it is, it means that it uh, loads the new page content or submit the data to server without reloading the page. So what does it mean? Like for instance, when you go to a social media platform, uh, while you are in the social media platform, you're reading the contents of the other people. Maybe you spend um, some time on the web page, then you'll see that okay, some new social media posts appear. Even though you didn't do any refresh on the page, you were still on the same page, but you will see that okay, there are some messages that came while you're on the same web page, and then you can see them. So you don't need to refresh the web page to get the new data from the server or to send data to the server. And in the following lectures of this class, we will see that we also use the server-side applications. And we can even say that now, like it is actually JavaScript is the common language throughout the full stack. So we use it in front end, we use it in React.js, we use it in Next.js, and we use it for our applications with the database, and we use it and we use this JSON file that we will see in the following slides. The file format we'll use the JSON data format to also keep our data and process our data. So in short, well, if you are a developer and you have a website, be sure that you put lots of JavaScript in that. Now let's start with a syntax. A syntactically a C family language, and normally there's no uh, historical relationship between JavaScript and Java. Like they are different programming languages, so it's not the case that one of them is derived from the other one, even though their names is similar. They are different languages, but they also have many common points. And for the users, for the students who knows Python and Java, you will notice that many of the syntax follows Java syntax and many of it actually follows Python syntax. And now we will see also the variables, operators, conditional statements, loops, arrays, and so on. First, data types. In order to declare a variable in JavaScript, one of the ways is using this const keyword. It stands for the constant. So if you want to create constant variables, you can use this const keyword and then the identifier name and then equal for the assignment operation and its value, like const height is equal to 110. So when we do it becomes a constant value, which means that we cannot change its value. And this const creates a block scope variable, which means that it's only accessible on its scope. So if you have, for instance, this for loop, you define this n variable here, so this will not be accessible outside this for loop because it is defined within this for loop. And earlier versions of JavaScript has actually you can instill JavaScript. Let me rephrase this. JavaScript has also another way to declare variables, which is var keyword, but it is not recommended anymore. So it's better to use const or let. And what is let? Well, let is basically to define variables that when you want to change its value. So when you define a variable with the const keyword, it becomes constant. So whenever you are trying to change it, you'll get an error. But if you say let, then you will be able to change its value. So you can translate this statement into English like let height be 110, so that then you can change it to some other values. Regarding data types in JavaScript, well, it looks more similar to Python because it is a loosely typed and dynamic language, what it means in this context is that we do not need to define the data type for the variables as in Python, but JavaScript derives its type from the value. So if it is 5, it should be number. If it is al-dahak, then it should be string. And from regarding the data types in JavaScript, we can say that we have these 7 data types for numbers up to 2053 to the power 53 minus 1. We have this number, but if you need a larger number, then you can use this big int type. We have strings, we have boolean, we have undefined that we will see in the following slides, and we have function as a data type. So this is important. Function is a data type in JavaScript. It implies actually many things, and one thing is that we can give functions as a parameter to other functions, and everything else is considered as object. And if you want to know the type of a variable, then you can use this type of keyword. And for the strings, again, JavaScript uses a notation similar to what Python has, so you can use either single quote or a double quote to define a string. And in the string methods, again, we have this combination of Python and Java syntax. For instance, to find the number of characters in a string, we use length as in Java, and to access a particular item in a given index, we can use either char add function as in Java, or you can use a square brackets and give the index number as in Python. But if you give an value like -1, you will not get the last character, but you will get only the value of undefined. So you won't get an error. It will still run, but the value will be undefined. And we cannot exceed, of course, the length of the text. So again, the first index, the index of the first letter is 0, and you can either use concatenate strings by using plus operator, or you can use concat function. And to convert a number to a string, well, there are two ways. You can either use toString function you can use either toString function, or you can use a string function and then give this number that you want to convert to string. And to convert a string to a number, well, there are more options actually. You can use either parseInt function. Maybe you can remember this from the Java. Again, in Java we were doing this by using the parseInt function of integer class. Or you can also use number function and give a string in it. And the last one is not very intuitive, but you use a plus operator, for instance, give it a string, then it will convert it to number. And this is more, you might think, is JavaScript is trying to actually again be more flexible, and it's trying to do an operation, so it sees that okay, this is a plus sign, it's a mathematical operation, so it is trying to convert it to a number, so that this is also another way to convert to convert strings to numbers. To give an example for this case, well, you can basically if you say plus and then a 10 number, and then if you print its type, then you'll get this number. And if you again make it minus operator, and then the result will be again a number. But if you make an asterisk, for instance, don't expect that it will work for all operations, then you'll get an error for this case. And for the template literals, well, this syntax, so if you want to have a formatted string, this you might find it similar to what we have in Python, but with some differences. In Python we have this f string, here we have this template literals, but the text is written between backticks, and also the variable names that you want to put in your string is again like in Python. You put $sign and the curly brackets, so that you can use variables in a string to have a to use it to put a placeholder for the variables in your strings. You can use it in this format, so that it will be an easier way to print messages that contain some values of variables. And in JavaScript now, it is important that we have two different values, undefined and null values. So what is undefined? Well, undefined means that we have a variable, it's been declared, but it doesn't have any assigned value. For instance, if we say let test var, and then if we try to print it, it will show undefined. So if we don't define this num, okay, let's make it let test num, and then if you want to print it, then we will get this undefined value. But null is an assignment value, so we can assign it to a variable to represent actually a no value. So we can say null, and that null can be null, and then the result will be, of course, null. But the interesting thing with the null is that if you try to check its type, you'll get an object. But in an undefined case, we would get an undefined. So basically, there are different data types. One of them is an object, the other one is undefined. And not a number, or in short NaN, it means that it's an illegal number. So if we try to, for instance, do an erroneous operation like 8 times 2, then you'll get this not a number result. And any operation with NaN will give us an NaN operator. So if we make this num, for instance, a times 2, okay, then if we try to make and then if we try to print it first, we'll get this. And if we try to add any operator on it, the result will be still NaN. And so you really need to be careful about that. Your results are real numbers. There's no mistake, because the program will not crash. It will continue to run. So when you are running your application, you also have to be sure that, okay, if your numbers are valid, if they are really a number. So you might also check it by using this isNaN function to understand whether a value is an illegal number or not. And with the NaN, whatever you do in terms of comparison, you will get a false result. So NaN is not equal to anything. Even though if you say that is NaN equal to NaN, well, the result is false. So whatever you do with the NaN, it will be always and always false. And for the comments, well, in JavaScript, as you can see, it uses Java syntax. So for a single line command, you use double slashes, and for multiple line, you can use this slash and asterisk command. Now let's see operators in JavaScript. For the operators, well, for a student who knows Python or Java, these are mostly familiar. You should be familiar with. But of course, for the logical operators, you can see that it follows Java syntax. And for the comparisons, they are mostly similar, but with one difference, which is we have these two equal signs and triple equal signs that we will explain what it means in the following slides. So we also have binary operators, logical AND operator, OR operator, and so on. And for the assignment operators, again, we have all these shorthands and so on. But now let's continue with the comparison operators, because we have this interesting case in JavaScript. So the rest are same, but there's a difference between two equal sign and triple equal sign. So let's look at this example. So we set a to 5, b to 4, and then if a is greater than or equal to b, the result will be true. Is a not equal to b? Yes, 5 is not equal to 4, so that's true. But now let's look at this example. So if we say 0, double equal sign, and empty space, the result will be true. But if we use triple equal sign, then the result will be false. So what is happening here is, when we use an triple equal sign, the value should be same and the data type should be same. So this is a number, this is a string, so the result will be false. But when you are using an double equal sign, then it actually tries to convert each of these values to their cases, and then check if their values become similar, like an empty string from a numerical representation. It is 0, its value is 0, so then this becomes true. So again, there's a difference between double equal sign and triple equal sign. In a triple equal sign, equality and the type are compared. Both of them are compared, but in a two equal sign, in a double equal sign, it just checks their values, but not the types. If their types are different, then their types are converted to each other to see if their values are same. So for instance, if we have this 5 and as a string 5, if we use double equal sign, the result will be true, otherwise it will be false. If we say 0 double equal sign with false, then it will be true, but with an triple equal sign it will be false. If we have null and undefined with double equal sign, it will be true, but triple equal sign it will be false. If we have NaN, in both cases it will be false. Right, conditional statements in JavaScript. So we will see basically its syntax. Well, when you look at the general syntax of if-else statements in JavaScript, you'll notice that it is following a very similar syntax of Java. So we have this if statement, and then between the parentheses we write our conditions, and then the code blocks are again described with the curly brackets, and we have this if and then else statements and so on. So if you look at this code, basically we first assign it to number 10, and then we check if it is an even number. When we divide it by 2, is the remainder 0 or not? If it is, we print this number is even, otherwise we print this number is odd. And again, it also has switch case statement. So basically what was a switch case statement, if you remember, we put out the value that we want to check, and then we define the cases that we want to that we will take different actions for each, like if the day is 1, 2 or 3 or 5, 6, 7, and the default one is if none of them. And now for each case we write our code what we want to do, and check that here we have these break statements. Are they mandatory to put these break statements? Well, actually it is not. You don't have to, but it depends on what you want to do. So what happens here is, let's say the day is 3, so we'll jump to here, and then it will print Wednesday, and then it will break. So the question is, what will happen if there is no break at all? Well, what will happen is we'll first jump to the, if again day is 3, we'll jump to the 3 case, and I will print Wednesday, assuming that there is no break here at all. Then we'll print all the way back down all of that. Actually, let's do an example for this one. Alright, in our example now, I just copy pasted that code and I set day to 3. Here you see the code, and here you will see this its output. I'm using this run.js.app for this application, and when we run this application, when we run it again, if it is 3, we jump to 3, then we print Wednesday as it's seen here, and then we break the code and so on. But what happens if we do not have any of these breaks? Well, the code is automatically executed. So as you can see that as I raise the breaks, it shows us all the outputs. So what will happen if you didn't have any breaks? It will go down to all the cases. And now going back to our slides. And in JavaScript we also have these values which have the value of false when used in a condition, which these are, well, false or 0, so or an empty string or a null or an undefined or a none. So all of these values are considered as false, and the other and every other things are considered as true. So again, let's do one example for this. So again, let's open our code again. Now I'll delete this part, and let's say that a is equal to an empty string, and then if we just say, then we can say console.log a is empty, else I'll just do a copy paste here. I'll say a is empty. So as you can see that now this is it's an empty string, you can say that it is 0, then we can say a is 0, row this is one way, and so on. And we can say nan, then we can say it again nan, and so on. So this basically this is considered as false. And of course, if you will put this part, then the output will change. Of course, now this will run as nan, and this now this becomes meaningless, so I'll just delete it. All right, then the while, do, and for loops. Again, for the while loops, as you can see that again now JavaScript is following Java Java syntax, which we have this while, within the parentheses we write our condition, and we define the while block with the curly brackets. When we look at this example, we see that okay, we say let counter be 0, and then while it is less than 10, print number, the counter itself with the formatted string, as you can see. And then we have this counter. We increment the counter, and here is the result that we can see for this example. It also has a do while loop as in Java again, so which means that in the first step we don't check the condition, so we definitely run the statements at least once, then we check the condition. If it is true, we'll go back and then run it again. Again, in the for loop, JavaScript follows Java syntax, so we have this for loop, and then between the parentheses we have these three cases, which is the first one is for the initialization, and then the criteria to stop the iteration, and how we will update the variables at each iteration. And then between the curly brackets we write our statements. Like for instance, if you want to calculate the n factorial, so we can first set let factorial be 1, so we initialize it, and now we say for, and then another one let I be, so this is our initialization step, I be 1, and then while I is less than or equal to n, and at each iteration we increment it by 1, we just update the factorial by multiplying it by I at each iteration. So again, it has this Java it follows the Java syntax for the for loops. And JavaScript has also a for off loop. So what is for off loop? Well, it is actually, you might think it of as the for each loop in Java, or also the for loops in Python, which means that if you have a list of items like an array here, you can see, then if you want to iterate all of them one by one in an iterative way, in an iterative way, if you want to go over all of these items, you can use this for off loop. So the word is syntax is different, but what it does is same. So we have this array, and in a for loop between the curly brackets we say const n, so const and then we use this off as a keyword, and then our list, and then at each iteration we use this n variable, whatever we want to do. So we can use it for off loop to iterate over the properties of an object. So let's say that we have this student. This is now from JavaScript. Now this is an object, so it has these properties: first name and the last name. And then if we use this object that entries student, it will give us a key value pairs. A key value pair is like first name and Ali, and the other one is last name and Mujtahid. So, and then at each iteration we will keep it in this key value pairs, so that we can run it with this, we can use it in our calculations. You might think of it as similar to dictionaries in Python, but again, now here we say that these are actually objects. They're considered as objects in JavaScript. Now we will see functions in JavaScript. If you remember in the previous class, we said that functions are actually data types. So this is quite different than what we see in Java or in Python. So it actually implies a couple of things that we can, and it also implies many couple of things that will change our coding. So first, how do we define the functions? Well, first, one of the ways is that we can use this function keyword, and then the function name and its parameters, and then between the curly brackets we can define what it will do. So like for this function, for instance, it takes a number and then it returns its double of it. Or another way is, like as I said, it's set that like a data type. So you can literally say that like defining a variable, you can define a variable name, and then you can say that okay, this is equal to function with the function keyword, and then the parameter it takes, like it takes two parameters and it returns their average. Then we can start calling this function. So this is, and then the other one is, well, it's just a different way of writing functions. So this is called lambda expressions. Recent versions of Java has also this lambda expressions. So this is mainly used uh, to write functions in a shorter way. Well, so basically this code and this code does exactly the same thing. We just what we are saying is we don't use this function keyword. We just define the parameters. Then it takes two parameters. And then we use this like an arrow sign, okay? And then we define a plus b divided by 2. So we saying like it will return this value. So the main advantage of this lambda expression is that it simplifies our coding. With less typing we can define the same thing, and I keep saying this, software developers are lazy people. We are lazy in typing, so we don't want to spend our time for some unnecessary text. So because of this, many languages have this kind of shorthands, short descriptions for the same code. So this is also one of them. And when we are talking the function scope, so well, each variable has its own scope, and this is again similar to what we see in Java, for instance. So let's look at this example, for instance. So we define a list here, which is outside this function, but this will now accessible. This will have a global scope, which means that it is accessible within this function or outside that function, so it will be accessible in all places. But when we look at this variable, which is count variable, it is defined within that function, so this will be only accessible within that function. And if you look at this for loop, well, this num variable is defined within that for loop, so it will be only accessible within that for loop. If you try to access it outside the for loop, you will get an error.